Hello everyone, today we're diving into something that nobody teaches you, but somehow everyone expects you to know: how to age like fine whiskey, not expired yogurt. You're sitting there right now, maybe in your old recliner that groans louder than you do when you stand up. The air conditioning hums like a slow jazz beat. Your coffee's gone cold again, but there's something about today that feels different. Maybe it's that glimmer of curiosity in your chest, or maybe you just really want to know why younger women keep glancing at that one gray-haired man at the grocery store like he's the last piece of cake at a wedding. Either way, you're in the right place. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I want to know who else can't sleep at 3 a.m., wondering whether it's too late to start using retinol. Now. Calm down, turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's begin today's journey of listening and healing together. You lean forward, just slightly, catching your reflection on the dark edge of the screen. And right then, it hits you: when did grooming start to feel like a chore rather than a charm? The hair trimming, the cologne, the small rituals that once made you feel sharp somewhere along the way. They fell behind the bills, the work stress, the what's the point days. But now, as your mind replays the moment that barista smiled a second too long, or that woman at the gas station who asked if you worked out, you start to see the truth. Grooming is not vanity, it's a signal. A quiet declaration that you're still in the room. The science, oh, it backs you up. In fact, studies on olfactory memory show that scent is one of the most powerful triggers for attraction and emotional connection. That means your cologne, that subtle, woodsy scent you almost stopped wearing, might be pulling more strings than your last dating profile ever did. You remember that one bottle, the one in the back of the cabinet, half empty and covered in dust. It smells like confidence, like road trips with the windows down, like long conversations under warm streetlights. That scent didn't just make you feel attractive, it made people lean in. Literally. The lean-in effect, as one behavioral psychologist once called it, is when people unconsciously move closer to someone they're drawn to. And don't even get me started on the beard. You've probably tried it all. Clean-shaven, like you're auditioning for a toothpaste ad. Scruffy, like a retired folk singer, or full-on beard that screams "I chop wood on weekends." The truth is, none of them are wrong if you feel right in them. But grooming isn't just about trimming. It's about intention. The barbershop becomes your temple. You walk in feeling like laundry day, and walk out like a bourbon commercial. And here's a fun fact: barbershop chairs have been shown to reduce cortisol levels in men by over 20% in just 30 minutes. Not because of the haircut, but because of the ritual, the hot towel, the shears, the sense of being taken care of. So yes, your jawline might have softened a little. Your hairline may be negotiating terms. But when your nails are clean, your skin is moisturized, and your scent lingers just long enough to be Mr. not just groomed. You're magnetic. There's an old saying somewhere, you forget who said it, but it always stuck: elegance is refusal. And now you understand. You refuse to let yourself go. You refuse to blend into the background. You refuse to smell like last week's laundry and think it's fine just because you're not going out anyway. You're going into presence, into care, into reclaiming that first 5 minutes someone sees you and thinks, "Damn, that man knows what he's doing." And sure, some experts still argue whether grooming truly affects how women perceive age and attractiveness. But while they argue, you're already 2 steps ahead, rinsing your face, straightening your collar, and reaching for the cologne you almost forgot you had, because you've remembered. Grooming makes the man. And just wait till we talk about how you walk into the room next. You're not even in the room yet, but they've already noticed you. Not because you shouted your arrival, or wore some flamingo pink tracksuit, but because you carry something even louder. Posture. It's funny, right? The way you stand has more impact now than the things you say. When you were younger, you tried so hard to impress with words, quips, pickup lines, even quoting Tarantino like it was Shakespeare. But now, you realize, confidence doesn't speak. It stands. You shift your shoulders just a little. Chest open, head level, spine unbending like a veteran's flagpole. You're not being proud. You're being real. And it shows. See, people assume posture is just about physical presence, but neurologically, it's more than that. There's something called embodied cognition, where the way you hold your body changes the way your mind works. Stand tall, and your brain registers strength. Slouch, and it starts looking for exits, literally. And those around you. They read posture like a second language. Researchers once showed that even a twinge difference in height perception, not actual height, just posture, changed how people rated someone's trustworthiness and leadership. That means you don't need to be 6'2" with a jaw carved by Michelangelo. You just need to look like you mean it. And that quiet confidence, it's the thing younger women pick up on, like a Wi-Fi signal. No words needed. Just energy. It's kind of like jazz. You don't blast it from speakers. You let it fill the corners of the room, soft and unassuming. That's what happens when you walk in tall, with no apology and no performance. You're not the guy trying too hard. You're the man who's already done it all. Remember that moment at the grocery store when you reached for the top shelf? That subtle lift in your back, that slight flex of the forearm, the stretch of that old shirt that somehow still fits just right. She looked. Not because you flexed, but because you didn't. Because it was natural. Funny fact, posture also affects voice depth. Yeah, you read that right. When you stand tall, your diaphragm opens, and your voice lowers. So even your "excuse me" at the cafe comes out like smooth bourbon on a Friday night. No wonder people turn their heads. But it's not all science. It's emotional too. You carry years of stories, of victories, of heartbreak, of dad jokes that didn't land but somehow did. That posture, that's the shelf you place all that on. And people see it. They feel safer around you, calmer, like things won't fall apart if you're there. There's a myth going around that age makes you invisible. That once you pass 40, people look through you like glass. But the truth is, bad posture makes you invisible. Good posture makes you unforgettable. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some so-called experts argue that posture is just a cosmetic thing, easily faked, and ultimately meaningless. But you know better. Because when you carry yourself with presence, your body tells the story your mouth doesn't have to. And that story, it's worth reading again. Now, picture this. You're at a park. There's jazz playing from a tiny Bluetooth speaker some college kid brought. You're standing near a tree, hands in your pockets. A group of younger women walk by, laughing, tossing glances. One of them notices you not because you did anything flashy, but because in a sea of noise, you were still, grounded, solid, and that kind of confidence. That's the rarest currency in town. So now, the question isn't, what do I say to impress her? It's, what kind of man do I look like before I even open my mouth? Spoiler, you already look like the kind that doesn't need to try. And if you do open your mouth, Let's make sure you know how to listen first. You don't interrupt. You don't check your phone. You don't even raise your eyebrows mid-sentence to signal, "I've got a better story." No, you do something rarer. You listen, not the performative kind either. Not the nodding while scanning the room type. You listen like it's 1995, before every conversation came with a screen competing for attention. You're fully present, and in today's world, that's magnetic. You're not just hearing words. You're absorbing, watching flicker across her face, noticing how she twists her hair when she talks about something she's passionate about, catching how her tone changes when she talks about her mother. And here's what most people miss. Active listening lights up the brain of the speaker. Neuroscientists found that when someone feels truly heard, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical. So no, listening isn't passive. It's chemical intimacy. It's making her body feel safe in a way most loud, charming 20-somethings haven't figured out yet. It's funny, isn't it? Back when you were younger, you thought impressing a woman meant knowing all the right things to say. But now you understand it's about making her feel like she's the most important person in the room. And that can't happen while you're glancing at your smartwatch, or rehearsing your next punchline in your head. So instead, you lean forward slightly. You mirror her posture without even thinking. You ask follow-up questions that aren't Googled deep, but sold deep. You say things like, "What happened next?" Or "That must have made you feel." And she notices. Not just because you're older, but because you're tuned in. And here's the kicker, being a great listener makes you more attractive neurologically. Studies in attraction consistently show that perceived empathy boosts desirability, not height, not car brand, not bank account digits. Empathy. You remember the first time this clicked. Maybe it was a date that didn't go the way you planned, until you stopped trying to lead the conversation and just let her talk. 30 minutes in, she looked at you like you'd just unlocked a secret part of her. You hadn't performed. You'd listened. And that made all the difference. Of course, some people will tell you that women don't want men who are quiet. That silence makes you seem boring or uninterested. But silence, when paired with attention, is anything but dull. It's grounding. It's the kind of calm that makes her want to tell you things she didn't plan to. And you don't interrupt. You don't fix. You don't pivot the topic. You receive. There's even a strange little fact you once read people remember. How they felt during a conversation far more than what was said. That means your calm, your focus, your nonverbal presence is doing 80% of the work. You just didn't realize it until now. And maybe, just maybe, that's why younger women notice you. Not because you dominate the room, but because in a world where everyone's talking over each other, you offer stillness. So the next time she says something unexpected, something vulnerable, or weird, or quietly brilliant, you don't pounce on it. You don't try to relate with a Me Too moment. You pause. You let the moment breathe. And in that breath, she sees something most men haven't shown her. A man who doesn't need to be the loudest to be the most powerful. So yeah, keep your grooming sharp. Keep your posture strong. But most of all, keep listening. Because the next story she tells might be the one she's never told anyone else before. And you'll be the one who is still enough to hear it. You don't interrupt. You don't check your phone. You don't even raise your eyebrows mid-sentence to signal, "I've got a better story." No, you do something rarer. You listen, not the performative kind either. Not the nodding while scanning their room type. You listen like it's 1995, before every conversation came with a screen competing for attention. You're fully present, and in today's world, That's magnetic. You're not just hearing words. You're absorbing, watching micro-expressions flicker across her face, noticing how she twists her hair when she talks about something she's passionate about, catching how her tone changes when she talks about her mother. And here's what most people miss. Active listening lights up the brain of the speaker, literally. Neuroscientists found that when someone feels truly heard, their brain releases oxytocin, the bonding chemical. So no, listening isn't passive. It's chemical intimacy. It's making her body feel safe in a way most loud, charming 20-somethings haven't figured out yet. It's funny, isn't it? Back when you were younger, you thought impressing a woman meant knowing all the right things to say. But now you understand it's about making her feel like she's the most important person in the room. And that can't happen while you're glancing at your smartwatch, or rehearsing your next punchline in your head. So instead, you lean forward slightly. You mirror her posture without even thinking. You ask follow-up questions that aren't Googled deep, but sold deep. You say things like, "What happened next?" Or "That must have made you feel." And she notices. Not just because you're older, but because you're tuned in. And here's the kicker: being a great listener makes you more attractive neurologically. Studies in attraction consistently show that perceived empathy boosts desirability, not height, not car brand, not bank account digits. Empathy. You remember the first time this clicked. Maybe it was a date that didn't go the way you planned, until you stopped trying to lead the conversation and just let her talk. 30 minutes in, she looked at you like you'd just unlocked a secret part of her. You hadn't performed. You'd listened. And that made all the difference. Of course, some people will tell you that women don't want men who are quiet. That silence makes you seem boring or uninterested. But silence, when paired with attention, is anything but dull. It's grounding. It's the kind of calm that makes her want to tell you things she didn't plan to. And you don't interrupt. You don't fix. You don't pivot the topic. You receive. There's even a strange little fact you once read: people remember how they felt during a conversation far more than what was said. That means your calm, your focus, your nonverbal presence is doing 80% of the work. You just didn't realize it until now. And maybe, just maybe, that's why younger women notice you. Not because you dominate the room, but because in a world where everyone's talking over each other, you offer stillness. So the next time she says something unexpected, something vulnerable, or weird, or quietly brilliant, you don't pounce on it. You don't try to relate with a Me Too moment. You pause. You let the moment breathe. And in that breath, she sees something most men haven't shown her. A man who doesn't need to be the loudest to be the most powerful. So yeah, keep your grooming sharp. Keep your posture strong. But most of all, keep listening. Because the next story she tells might be the one she's never told anyone else before. And you'll be the one who was still enough to hear it. There's something about the way you move that tells a story before your mouth ever gets the chance. Not rushed, not robotic, just ... deliberate. Like every step has somewhere it's meant to go, but nowhere it has to be. It's not about swagger, it's about pace. You walk into a room like you've been there before, Ivan. If you haven't, your hands aren't flailing in your pockets or scrolling a phone. Your eyes aren't darting for exit signs. You're not fiddling with your keys like the moment's too big. You're still, even when moving. And that stillness, it's rare. In psychology, there's this phenomenon called behavioral gravitas, the idea that people who move slowly and purposefully are perceived as more competent and trustworthy. It's primal. In nature, the predator isn't the one making noise. It's the one standing completely still, watching, choosing its moment, and now you get it. You're not trying to be noticed. You're making others notice themselves around you. You probably didn't think twice about it at first. Maybe you were at a coffee shop, reaching for a napkin, and your slow, steady movement made her glance up. Not because you looked flashy, but because you didn't rush. You let the world bend to your rhythm instead of chasing it. That's power most people never learn. Here's a weird fact you'll love. People instinctively match their walking pace to someone they're attracted to. Yep, a 2015 behavioral study found that couples in sync, even in walking speed, reported deeper emotional bonding. So when your pace is calm and grounded, it makes her want to match you, so consciously syncing to your vibe. And let's be honest, you didn't always move like this. Back in your 20s, you rushed. Every text had to be replied to in seconds. Every date had to feel like a trailer for a romantic comedy. You were all punchlines and gestures. But now, you realize what's truly attractive is being unbothered, not lazy, not slow, just unshaken by the chaos. And that seeps into everything. The way you stir your drink. The way you pick up a book and flip to the middle. The way you nod when someone talks, as if you've already made peace with how the world is. You're the man who pauses before speaking, who doesn't walk like he's escaping something, but like he's arriving somewhere worthwhile. And that's exactly what younger women pick up on. That centering, that slowness as power. Because so many people are sprinting, tapping, swiping, vibrating with anxiety. But you move like time doesn't own you anymore. Sure, some critics might call it laziness, say that slow movement equals low energy or disengagement. But experts still debate whether fast-paced behavior actually signals capability or just chaos in disguise. Meanwhile, you've mastered the art of choosing your tempo. And that's freedom. You remember being at that rooftop party last year, don't you? Everyone buzzing around like shaken soda cans. But you leaned on the rail, drink in hand, eyes on the skyline. You didn't chase anyone, and yet you drew them in, one by one. Because grace isn't just a dancer's trait. It's a man's choice. And you've made yours. And maybe tonight, when you walk across the room to refill your glass, you'll notice it again, that quiet pull you have, that ripple you leave behind. Not because you're in a rush, but because you're not. You're not just attractive. You're anchored. You stand in front of the bathroom mirror not to check for wrinkles or gray hairs, but to shave with an actual razor. Not a 5-blade plastic thing with a vibrating handle and a subscription plan. A real blade. The kind that requires your focus. The kind that says, I still care. And that's the fifth habit, isn't it? Ritualized grooming, not vanity, not obsession. Just a quiet, disciplined kind of self-respect. It's not about hiding age. It's about honoring it. You trim your beard with intention, not in a hurry. You moisturize, not because some influencer told you to, but because your skin feels like parchment after winter, and you know better now. You even wear cologne, lightly. Not to announce yourself in clouds of overcompensation musk, but because you understand that scent is memory, and when someone walks past you later, they should remember you, not the last guy who spilled Axe on himself. There's actually a neurological basis for this. Smell is the only sense directly connected to the amygdala, the emotional memory center of the brain. That means the right scent doesn't just attract, it imprints. You remember the one time a woman stopped you mid-conversation just to ask what cologne you were wearing. It wasn't flashy. It was woodsy, a little smoky, with a bass note of quiet confidence. And she leaned in, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to stay longer in your presence. And here's the twist. The older you get, the better grooming works for you. That's not marketing talk, it's biology. As testosterone dips slightly, your skin can become drier, your hair finer, your scent more subtle. But these aren't flaws, they're details, and details, when sharpened, become art. You see it in your nails, trimmed and clean. You see it in your shoes, polished, not flashy, just cared for. You see it when you run a comb through your hair and notice the silver streaks that weren't there 5 years ago. And instead of dyeing them, you nod. Let them stay. Let them say, "This man's been through some things and lived to tell it." And maybe that's why younger women notice. Not because you're trying to look younger, but because you look like someone who knows what to do with himself. You'd be surprised how many people never learn that. There are men in their 20s who still treat grooming like a chore. Worse, like a gamble. Throw on a trendy jacket, skip the socks, call it a style. But you iron your shirts because wrinkles don't match the way you carry yourself. You press the collar flat because precision speaks. Of course, some skeptics will say it's superficial, that grooming doesn't matter, that true attractiveness comes from within. And yes, they're half right, but the other half, it's all about respect. You respect yourself enough to look like you've got your life together, even when you're still figuring things out. And that, in itself, is deeply attractive. You remember the story, don't you? The time you were running late for a dinner. You had 10 minutes, and you still shaved. You still adjusted the cuffs of your shirt. You still put on the leather shoes instead of sneakers. And when she opened the door, her eyes lingered not on your face, but on the way you showed up. She said, "You smell incredible." And you smiled. Not because of the compliment, but because you'd done it on purpose. With care, with ritual. Like a man who doesn't chase beauty, but tends to it in himself. So, tomorrow morning, when the light hits the sink just right, and the steam curls around the mirror, take your time. Warm the shaving cream in your hands. Comb the beard if you've got one. Check the nails, the shoes, the scent. Because real attractiveness, it starts before you ever leave the house. It begins with the way you prepare to be seen. You sit differently now. You don't slump. You don't fidget. And you certainly don't fold in on yourself like you're apologizing for the space you take up. No, you take up space like you've earned it. That's the 6th habit, confident body language. But not the exaggerated kind you see in TikToks or in dating alpha male seminars. You don't puff your chest like a cartoon. You don't swing your arms like you're in a cologne ad. You simply exist in full, back straight, shoulders relaxed, chin up. But not arrogant, just ... aware. You lean back in your chair like the world won't fall apart if you don't fill the silence. You make eye contact, not too long, not too sharp, like you're letting someone know they're being seen, not studied. And that alone sets you apart. There's a term social psychologists love, nonverbal dominance. It's not about aggression, it's about ease. The people who speak less but hold presence, they draw attention naturally. Because their bodies say, "I belong here. I don't need to prove it to you." You didn't always sit like that. Remember, back when you'd tighten your jaw on dates, overcompensate with loud gestures, or fake laughter when silence felt awkward. But then, you learned. You practiced. You stopped trying to force chemistry, and instead, started feeling your own rhythm. And that rhythm, it changed everything. There's even a weird little study done on speed daters. Believe it or not, where researchers found that participants who used open, relaxed postures were rated as significantly more attractive than those who fidgeted or folded inward. Even when everything else, clothing, age, looks was the same. It's as if the body broadcasts self-worth long before your words do. You felt it just the other day, sitting across from her at that quiet outdoor bar. She talked, and you listened, but the magic wasn't just in what you said, it was in how still you were. Your hands didn't fumble with your drink, your knee didn't bounce. You just ... held space. Like you could sit there for hours, not in a rush, not chasing anything, just anchored in your own energy. And she noticed. She kept leaning in just a little more than necessary. Like your calm invited her to relax too. Here's the thing most people forget. Confidence is felt, not explained. You don't have to say, "I'm confident." You just have to be still enough to let others settle into your pace. And younger women, they've grown up in a world of speed notifications, performance, constant validation seeking, so when someone like you shows up, not chasing approval, not flinching at silence, it feels like water in the desert. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. There will be days when your back aches or you feel invisible in a crowd, but even then, you remember your body. You adjust. You take up space anyway. Because you've earned it through experience, through failures, through lessons you didn't ask for but learned from anyway. And maybe tonight, when you walk through the door of that new place she invited you to, you won't have to say anything impressive right away. You'll just stand there, grounded. A man with time on his side. A man who's no longer trying to be impressive, but simply present, and that presence, it says more than any line ever could. You laugh differently now. Not the high-pitched, performative kind. Not that nervous chuckle people toss out like spare change. No, your laugh is low, warm, and earned. It rolls out slowly, like a story well told. And when you're amused, really amused, it's quiet. At first, then sudden, like thunder cracking from a calm sky. And that's habit number 7. A playful, self-aware sense of humor, not slapstick. Not sarcasm soaked in bitterness. Just playfulness, a lightness that says, "I've seen enough of life to know not to take it too seriously." There's this fascinating study done at Stanford, no less, that found men who aged with a strong sense of humor tended to report higher emotional well-being, greater romantic satisfaction, and more positive attention from younger people. It turns out, laughter isn't just contagious, it's connective. And when it comes from someone older, it feels safe. Like, if he can laugh, maybe everything's going to be okay. You've seen it in action. That moment when a date starts off a little stiff, a little too polished, and then you say something unexpected, like the time you pointed at your slightly crooked tooth and said, "This one's my favorite tits." The rebel. She blinked, then laughed. The tension dropped like a curtain, and the conversation finally began. You're not afraid to laugh at yourself anymore. That's the trick. You talk about getting lost in a Whole Foods because you couldn't find quinoa. You admit you once thought gluten-free meant tasteless. You even joke about forgetting why you walked into a room. And somehow, that vulnerability in wit disarms people. Because charm isn't in perfection. It's in relatability. Here's a fact most people miss. Younger women aren't drawn to you because you're flawless, they're drawn to you because you don't pretend to be. You carry your humor like a warm coat, not a shiny armor. And that's rare in a world where everyone's trying to be polished, edited, and on brand. Remember that brunch last fall? When she asked what you'd do if you could relive your 30s, and you said, probably moisturize, invest in Bitcoin. She nearly choked on her mimosa. Not because the joke was perfect, but because it was you. Honest, quick, slightly ridiculous. And she leaned in a little closer after that. Why? Because you made the moment light. You reminded her, and yourself, that even in a world full of pressure, there's still room to breathe. Some experts still argue about this, whether humor is biologically attractive or culturally conditioned. But you've lived enough to know, when you make someone laugh, you open a door to trust. You say, hey, I see the mess too, and I'm still smiling. And maybe that's why your humor stands out. It's not loud, it's not desperate, it's not about landing the punchline. It's about timing, and tone, and knowing exactly when to be serious and when to break the tension with a raised eyebrow and a dry line about goat yoga. So tomorrow, when you find yourself in a conversation that's drifting toward awkward silence, don't panic. Smile. Say something unexpected, something light, something honest, because you're not just the man who looks good for his age. You're the man who knows that laughter is how we survive it. You pause before you speak, not because you don't know what to say, because you know the power of waiting, of letting your words gather weight, like rain forming before a storm. And when you do speak, your voice doesn't rush. It flows. Slow, calm, and clear. That's the 8th habit. Thoughtful conversation, not just talking, communicating. You speak like someone who's learned that silence isn't awkward, ... It's sacred. And when you ask questions, you actually listen to the answers. You don't just wait for your turn to talk. You've noticed how rare that is. These days, most people seem to listen only long enough to respond. But you listen long enough to understand. And it shows. It's in how you remember the details. She mentioned she likes chamomile tea. You ask how her sleep's been lately. She told you her grandma used to sing jazz. You send her a song that sounds like it. Little things, right? But they land like thunderclaps in a world full of small talk. There's a psychological term for this active listening. It's a skill therapists use, leaders cultivate, and yes, men like you refine over time. And research shows people feel more connected, more validated, and more attracted to those who truly listen without interruption or judgment. You remember one date clearly. She was talking about quitting her job and trying something new. Most people would have jumped in with advice, or here's what you should do. But you didn't. You nodded. You asked, what would your 16-year-old self think of that? And her whole face softened, like she hadn't been asked that in years. You get it now. Conversation isn't a debate. It's not a performance. It's not about facts or flash. It's a dance of attention. And the older you get, the better your rhythm becomes. You don't try to dominate the floor. You simply make space. And younger women notice. Because that kind of presence feels like oxygen. You also know when not to talk. When silence can say, I'm here, without a word. You've sat on balconies at dusk, letting the air speak. You've held hands through heartbreaks, saying more with your stillness than 1,000 motivational speeches could. Because you've learned, true wisdom doesn't shout. Still, some people debate this. Experts can't agree whether older men are naturally better communicators or if it's just lived experience. But in your case, it's both. You've failed enough to know the value of asking twice. You've hurt and been hurt. And now you choose words like you'd choose stones for a garden path. Carefully, gently, with intent. And when you speak about yourself, you're honest. No puffing, no posturing. You say things like, I didn't always get this right, or that was a hard year for me. And in those moments, the air changes. People lean in. Not out of pity, but because vulnerability delivered calmly, is magnetic. Remember when she told you, "You're easy to talk to"? You didn't flinch. You just smiled, sipped your drink, and thought, "That took me decades to earn." So next time the conversation drifts, don't panic. Don't fill the air with noise. Just breathe, tilt your head, ask the better question. And when you speak, let the words land like footprints, firm, present, and real. Because the way you talk now, it doesn't just fill space, it makes people want to stay in it. You dress differently now, not louder, not trendier, but sharper, smoother, more like someone who finally understands that style isn't about standing out, it's about standing true. That's the 9th habit. Effortless personal style, not fashion. Style. There's a difference, and you feel it every time you reach for your favorite jacket, not because it's expensive, but because it fits like it was made for you. The fabric, the weight, the way it moves when you walk it, says more than any logo ever could. You used to think younger guys had the advantage with trends, flashy sneakers, oversized prints, clothes that scream for attention. But then you learned. Real style whispers. It's in the cut, the texture, the subtle pairing of color. And when you walk into a room dressed like yourself, people notice even if they can't say exactly why. And younger women, they see it too. Because your style doesn't try to mimic youth. It reflects your mastery over time. There's even an old psychology experiment that gets tossed around in design schools. 2 men are rated for attractiveness. Same age, same face. But one is in a well-fitted charcoal shirt and clean boots. The other, baggy jeans, outdated polo. Guess who scored higher across all demographics? It wasn't even close. Why? Because style signals control over your body, your choices, your life. It doesn't have to be designer. It just has to be intentional. You've likely streamlined by now. A few go-to outfits. The jeans that hug just right. The shirt that frames your shoulders without clinging. The leather belt that's aged like a good bottle of bourbons, cuffed, worn, perfect. It's not about quantity. It's about editing. And let's not forget grooming. That beard you once let grow wild. Now it's trimmed. The cologne, just one spray. Enough to suggest mystery, not overwhelm like a department store sample counter. You even keep your nails clean, your shoes shined. Not for vanity, for dignity. You remember that night out the rooftop bar, cool breeze, that red wine that tasted better than you expected. She told you, you just look, put together. And she meant more than your jacket. She meant you looked like a man who'd made peace with who he is. That's what your style says now. No more trying to be the guy on the billboard. You're the man in the mirror, and he's funnily enough, sure. Experts debate the impact of personal style versus raw attraction, but let them debate. You've lived long enough to know, when you dress like you respect yourself, people treat you differently. It's subtle. The waiter stands straighter. The stranger smiles longer. And yes, she pays closer attention. Even the colors you wear speak now. Navy says calm. Earth tones say grounded. Black, in the right cut, says unapologetic. You don't need to overthink it anymore. You dress with clarity. And that clarity, it reads as confidence. So tomorrow, when you step into that local bookstore, or coffee shop, or wine bar, wear what makes you feel sharp. Not flashy. Just ... right. The fabric that doesn't itch. The shoes that don't squeak. The watch that ticks like your heartbeat steady, unfazed. Because at your age, style isn't about chasing trends. It's about owning your lane and walking it with presence. Section 10. You walk differently now. Not rushed, not restless. There's a slowness to your steps that isn't laziness, it's confidence, it's presence. It's the final habit that draws attention even when you say nothing. Commanding stillness, it's in the way you lean against a doorframe. Arms crossed, calm like a man who's already figured out what matters. It's in the way you sit. Relaxed, gaze, steady, not checking your phone every 2 seconds. You know how to be in a room without needing to dominate it. This stillness isn't about passivity, it's about gravity. You've become the kind of man whose presence settles. People and younger women feel it instantly. There's actual science behind this, an area of study in behavioral psychology called nonverbal dominance. Researchers have found that people with calm, controlled physical presence are rated as more attractive, more trustworthy, and more high value, especially by those younger than them. Why? Because stillness reads as certainty. And certainty is rare. You don't fidget anymore. You don't try to fill every silence with noise. You don't pace like someone who's afraid of their own thoughts. Instead, you've learned to breathe in discomfort, to sit with a hard question, to respond slowly and mean it. Think back to the last time you were in a crowded space, a noisy room, full of movement and energy, and yet she noticed you. Not because you were the loudest, not because you were the flashiest, but because you were still. And in that stillness, there was strength, mystery, peace. There's an old saying, still waters run deep. You used to laugh at it. Now you live it. Some experts debate whether this kind of presence is innate or earned. But in your case, it was forged. Through failure, through patience, through years of figuring out how not to react to everything. You remember once, at a gallery opening, someone tried to provoke you, just testing, as people do. You didn't flinch. You didn't take the bait. You simply smiled, paused, and said, "You're clearly having a day. I'll let you win this one." Then you turned and walked away unbothered, grounded. Later that evening, someone else approached you. "That was the sexiest thing I've ever seen," she said, "and you didn't even say a word." Now, your movements are measured. Your eye contact is direct but soft. Your gestures are minimal but intentional. You don't You've learned the truth. People listen more when you speak less. Even your rest is different. When you sit alone on a bench, book in hand, you don't look lonely. You look at peace. And peace. It's the rarest cologne there is. You're not chasing anything now. Not validation, not attention, not youth. You're just here, fully. And that energy, it hums louder than any pickup line ever could. So the next time you feel unsure, like maybe you're not interesting enough, or lively enough, remember this: you don't have to move mountains. You just have to stand still long enough for people to notice they're looking at one dot. Now that you've walked with me through all 10 habits, take a deep breath. Let it settle in your chest. Let the stillness wrap around you like your favorite coat. Because whether you know it or not, you've become the kind of man who doesn't need to prove anything. Your presence already does. Say the word. And I'll guide you through the final reflection, gentle, quiet, and just for you.